Everyone, welcome. So today is day 25. What we are going to be doing is that we're going to be talking about applied behavior analysis. Actually, this is our first like actual step into forensic psychology, and it's learning exactly why. So here's kind of our agenda for the day. What we want to do is that we first want to talk about what exactly is forensic psychology. You probably have this really big grandiose idea because it's been popularized since I've been watching TV about forensic psychology, but we want to talk a little bit about just what exactly it is. We're going to talk about how forensic psychology is used in our modern world. And then finally, we're just going to get into ABA, which is applied behavior analysis. Then at the very end, I'm going to touch on a little bit about what's the underlying theme of forensic psychology. I think that forensic psychology also has a bunch of just questions and kind of more metacognitive like questions to ask about rather than just like evidence, and that makes for really good discussions. So a couple of things for your homework. First off, you know that you have your DNA case study due at the end of this week, and then assigned today, it's not an actual just like discussion board assignment or anything of the sort, but I posted a reading, and it's a threat assessment on a school shooter, actually. And I want you just to skim that article. And it literally is just from the FBI. And we want to talk about it a little bit later because if you remember, I sent out an email, and the next meeting that we are going to have, the next class day, we are going to make it a Zoom meeting because I really want to talk and have these discussions that allows for us to make a better understanding. So let's get started. First off, let's talk about just what forensic psychology is. First off, you know that forensic psychology is just the application of psychology into a criminal investigation. It really is talking about the mental processes and the behavior of criminals and exactly how that behavior can be intercepted in such a way that we can combat crime. That's the main idea. Now, you all probably have a really funky idea of forensic psychology because you have been watching way too much, probably Criminal Minds or like Mindhunter on Netflix, and you have this grandiose idea, or you've watched Silence of the Lambs one too many, and all of a sudden you think Hannibal Lecter is like, no, it's ridiculous. Forensic psychology in modern day is not just like criminal profiling. It is so popularized in pop culture today that it's absurd, but there's lots and lots of different aspects of just forensics and of the legal system that has to deal with forensic psychology, such as like child custody evaluations or just treatment of criminal offenders. That's part of ABA, is talking about how exactly we can make a difference with all of this. So all of this is kind of an idea of forensic psychology, but it's just a different idea as to what you've probably been used to and how exactly it's kind of been perceived in this day and age. Now, what we want to do is we want to talk about ABA. This is where I always start with forensic psychology because it's the number one way in which we can kind of break down a crime and talk specifically about each specific just behavior in itself and discuss exactly what that is. So, the idea of ABA is that it's the usage to predict future behavior. Notice, it's to predict future behavior. It's not talking about past behaviors so much. You look at past behaviors, of course, but the idea here is this person going to offend again? So it really is trying to like assume and to decide whether or not, first off, they are going to commit a violent crime again, or they are going to commit offenses, just, future offenses. So it really is talking about ABA is kind of this like first step into criminal psychology, trying to figure out exactly how and what caused a person to perform the behaviors in which they have, and then finally to use that understanding to decide whether or not that person is going to continue those behaviors or if they are, set, done, finalized. So let's talk about ABA. We're going to go through a couple of different examples and then we're going to call it a day. So, ABA is based off of three things. It's called the ABCs, and it makes it a lot easier for all of us to understand. And these three things are antecedent, behavior, consequence. Every single crime or every single action rather, not necessarily just crime, can follow these three. So what we want to do is we want to go through these three and really discuss them in detail, trying to figure out how exactly a person has made these decisions in order to create such an application for themselves. So our first one is antecedent. An antecedent is just the trigger of an unwanted behavior of some sort. Now, common or terms by itself, instead of antecedent, you might have heard the word motive before, and motive is actually different than antecedent, and we'll get into that later whenever we talk about actual profiling and motive for it. But the idea here is that an antecedent is more like a trigger, more so than anything else. A motive could be like, oh, they wanted to do X, but an antecedent is more along the lines of they did X because. So it could be very, very common things such as a loss of a job, loss of significant other, past upbringings or trauma, anything of the sort that allows for you to kind of understand why did they perform the behavior in which they performed. That's your antecedent, is first. The second one is behavior, and the behavior is literally the undesirable action of whatever it could be that influences that crime. Now, part of it is that you have to think the behavior does not necessarily mean the crime itself, but also factors that influence that crime. So let's kind of turn it into a different way. Think of like a person who has issues with like narcotics, and they know this one friend who every single time they go over to their place, the friend always offers them some form of narcotic. The idea is that if the antecedent by itself for that type of behavior could just be a you know a predisposition to addiction, then the behavior itself is not necessarily taking or ingesting those narcotics, but it could also just be contacting that friend. It really is not just a step by step by step process, and it could be a little bit more complicated than what you might think. Then finally, consequence is the reaction, it's the reward that the person gets that reinforces that original behavior. So it's kind of trying to decide what exactly has this person done that allows for them to understand that reward. So let's just talk about some common consequences besides just the crime. And what I mean by that is that, again, if we use our example of, the person with the addiction, then the consequence of that might not necessarily be the high that they feel afterwards. It could be the loss of time. It could be the, abstain from society. There's lots and lots of different things that could allow for people to understand that their reward is different than the actual behavior. So these are your three. It's always antecedent, it's first, and again, it's the trigger, it's whatever in the world caused them to be such a way. Behavior is the actual action by itself, and then the reward is the consequence. It's the ABCs. So here's what I want to do with you, is I want to run through a couple of odd scenarios and talk about the ABCs. The first one is right here that I have, and it's that the man allegedly steals from a store and then comes back and asks for a job application. Of both of these crimes that I'm going to go over with together, the idea here is that these are both recent crimes. I literally typed in weirdest crimes of 2020, and both of these came up. So I want to talk about exactly what is like the ABCs that we could go and we could say for each of these crimes. So I'm going to write it antecedent, behavior, and then finally I'm going to just write the consequence over here. Now, let's first take a look at this crime in detail and try and figure out exactly what occurred during this crime so that we can go and we can say exactly what is happening. Now, it says by itself, the man applied for a position, allegedly stole from the business twice on the same day. Shocking. 36-year-old man first bought some items with a rewards card but did not pay for a pair of sunglasses and some ammunition. He returned 3 hours later. The man allegedly left the store with 2 more pairs of sunglasses. So, by itself, he stole 3 pairs of sunglasses and some ammo. And he went and he asked for this job application. So let's talk about just the ABA for these. First one, again, is antecedent. It's the trigger of unwanted behavior. So think about it. Why in the world would someone want or cause for them to want to steal some ammunition and 3 pairs of sunglasses? Not really an easy question to answer, but if we again think about why are they or what has caused them, what has led them to a life that has, you know, caused them to commit or to perform this action. So by itself, if I think of a guy stealing 3 things of sunglasses and a thing of ammo, my antecedent, whatever he is, forebringing, his thing that has happened over the past, is that I'm just going to say loses sunglasses too easily. Okay, fine. This is my antecedent. It, again, is just one of those topics that allows for him to understand exactly what is, causing this trigger of this action. Now, we could say loses sunglasses or loses ammo. More than likely, the ammo is probably more expensive than sunglasses, so maybe he loses ammo too easily. But that's the antecedent that I'm going to go with for this specific crime. Next one is the behavior. And it's literally the actual behavior that has caused him to be now in this predicament. And his behavior that he went is that he stole sunglasses, or I'm just going to say items. Stole items. That's his behavior. Again, whatever in the world caused for him to go and commit to this action. And then finally, the consequence is the reward that reinforces that action. And his reward for it is that he now has sunglasses, now has 3 pair of sunglasses. Fine. The idea here is that, again, this is kind of a process. If he has a propensity, a predisposition to lose sunglasses too easily, then maybe he doesn't want to pay for sunglasses anymore. Therefore, he stole the items, and because he stole the items, now his reward is he has 3 pairs of sunglasses. And he goes and he thinks to himself, well, this worked out pretty well for me. Until eventually he came back and asked for a job application, and now his idea, his reward, is he is arrested for theft. So your idea now is ask yourself, because again, ABA is all talking about predicting future behavior. Do you think now that this individual is going to go and is going to commit the same crime? And more than likely, it probably needs a little bit more detail than just a guy coming and stealing 3 pairs of sunglasses, some ammunition. But does this actively and does this accurately reflect his actions upon this crime? That's the main idea here. So let's now try a second one. The second one's a little bit more odd. Man robs bank, immediately throws money into the air while shouting Merry Christmas and waits to be arrested. Literally, this guy walked into a bank, handed the bank teller a piece of paper saying, give me all the money, took that money, threw it in the air, walked over to the Starbucks across the street, sat down, waited to be arrested. Again, not really an odd or a logical set of facts or conclusions that allows for it. But again, let's see our ABCs for this specific crime. Now, again, antecedent here is whatever in the world caused for them to have this trigger of unwanted behavior. Antecedents a lot of the time in thefts, especially thefts with money, something of the sort could be loss of job. But something like this doesn't really scream to me, I need money, because again, he had the money. Well, had the money and then tossed it in the air. So maybe it's not so much an antecedent of loss of job, but maybe it's an antecedent of just lacking Christmas spirit. And what I mean by that is that maybe he went and he always had a very, very grandiose Christmas with his family, growing up a couple of years ago, something of the sort. And maybe now, for whatever reason, he's alone. Some of his family members have moved on. Doesn't really tell us. But I'm going to say that his antecedent is lacking Christmas spirit. Again, the behavior is what exactly, caused this behavior forward. And he went, and his behavior is he robbed a bank. So if he went and robbed a bank after everything else, this is his, consequence. His consequence now is the reward that he gets from this behavior. Did he receive an accurate, sentencing for this behavior? And his reward, absolutely, then, is just seeing joy in others. The idea here, and if you read this actual article, it's hilarious because the police go and, of course, arrest the person, and they have arrested them, and they go through this entire process. And in the article, it's cracked me up whenever I first read it. It said the majority of the money has been recovered, meaning not all of it has been recovered. So obviously, someone made out, like a bandit, and got a little bit, wealthier because of this man's actions. So if we talk about now then just ABA overall, we're asking ourselves, does this person have a propensity to repeat this crime? Obviously, it's a crime. The person was arrested afterwards. So if he is theft, he is given now money from this bank to the individual, modern day Robin Hood, if you will. But his idea, again, is shouting Merry Christmas at the end of all of it. So, what do you think? I'm kind of curious as to this one. I think I'm going to ask you whenever we have our next class. But do you think that this person has a propensity to repeat this action? Now, this action specifically, the robbing of the bank, I would not consider a violent crime. And what I mean by that is that this immediately is not a crime that would scream out, oh, I'm going to go and repeat this action again. Do I believe that he is going to repeat this action again? Absolutely. I think that maybe the person is going to go and celebrate Christmas. Fine. They can go and they can celebrate Christmas however in the world they want. Are they going to necessarily steal in order to celebrate Christmas? Probably not. But that's of my own opinion, and as opposed to what other people may think, absolutely. So, this is kind of the idea. ABA, again, is meant to try and predict future behavior. It's really going in and it's talking about how can you intervene with specific people in order to figure out exactly what we have. Now, the reason why I always start with ABA is right here. It's talking about crime prevention is maybe one of the most important things, because the idea is you're going to learn with forensic profiling whenever we do it together. Forensic profiling is after the fact. There has to be a crime committed of some sort in order for you to create a profile. And the more crimes, the more accurate the profile. ABA is the only technique that we have that allows for us to change before the action of, do we think that this person going and being arrested because he throws money in the air, do you think that that's going to change the action? Do you think the person going and asking for another job or just a job application after stealing is going to go and ask for or go and steal more sunglasses and ammunition? Do you really think that these two crimes are associated with each other? So, we're going to talk about, again, lots and lots of crimes as we continue. But ABA is really, really important, and I like to always start with it because it's the way in which we intercept and we stop this crime from occurring or furthering in differing ways. And we talk about it. What's the antecedent? What's the behavior? What's the consequence? Always those three. So, we're going to use this information next time. As I said, next time we're really, really getting into criminal profiling, because I know that this is always the one that students get really, really excited about. It's what they've heard about. I will give you the opportunity to profile as much as I can. We talk about a couple of cases, a little bit more involved than what you've seen even here, and just specifically, how does criminal profiling affect, and how do we accurately profile crime? Now, I go, and as I said, part of this unit is really, really good discussions. And part of the discussion that I want to have is right here is what makes the definition of a criminal? And is crime a social construct or is it a human one? Do I ask and do I say, is it just a, you've probably heard it in the terms, not so much as like nature versus nurture, but has crime ever been a thing, or is it something that we ourselves as a society have created? We have to kind of look at these questions and answer them in order to accurately reflect and say, how do we drop the crime rates then? So this is all the next idea of our next class period is going to be our Zoom meeting, and you will come and you will join our Zoom with that code. As I said, I'm hoping to go and count it for points, but if you cannot make it, please, please, please just let me know. Check your email for the exact times. Now, at the very, very end, as I said, your homework is just to skim the threat assessment reading. This is of the school shooter. And we're going to talk about what kind of traits allow for us to understand the behaviors of the school shooter and how has it changed over time. So please, 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 the reason I moved it from 8:30 in the morning into the very, very last class is come prepared to talk. I really, really want a nice discussion between all of us, and we haven't seen each other in so stinking long either, so I think it would be a good opportunity. But besides that, everyone, just let me know if you have any questions. Thank you all for everything, and I hope to see you next time. See ya.